Okay. Okay. Got a couple things. Do we have any ex-Navy people? Okay. One, two. That's good, because I might need to call on you for a little clarification on some of my terminology. Maybe I don't explain it well enough.
I was at Navy. I would never.
Yeah, okay, you're on the other side of the surface.
I was on aircraft carriers. So
Okay.
talking little boats.
Okay, never mind that. Okay. One other thing I'd like. Yeah, and I don't want to make this just I'm talking to you. I'd really like, if possible, to just, if you have any questions, to feel free. Please interrupt me and say, wow, wait, explain that a little bit more. It's more of an interactive thing. I don't like these things. Let's make it as interactive as possible. And if you have any, want to explain that a little bit more or something, feel free. Make it easier on me. As I get closer to the end, it's going to become a little emotional for me, and I'll apologize right up front. Please forgive me, but understand that that's the way it is for me. It's a very tough thing for me to talk about sometimes. And, well, we'll just go from there. First thing here, I'm sure you've all have heard that the will of God will not take you where the grace of God will not protect you. Okay. Keep that in mind. Okay, so over the last 30 years or so, my wife has often said that God has a special plan for me. Well, he's got a plan for all of us, but she thinks he keeps me around for a very special reason, which he hasn't disclosed yet. And her logic is this. Twice I've been on the wrong end of a gun. I won't talk about that much more. I spent 16 minutes inside of a concrete aircraft shelter with an aircraft, a combat fighter aircraft that was loaded with 12 500-pound bombs, 4 heat-seeking missiles, and 3 radar-guided missiles, and it blew up on engine start. 16 minutes later, the fire department finally showed up. Throughout 3 explosions, it exploded, blew me out of the hangar, ran back in, picked up the fire extinguishers that people dropped off for us, and said, here you go, and they left. And got back up, actually ran into the fire, and managed to extinguish the fire inside the aircraft. It was 16 minutes, and it kind of roasted me a little bit. Lost a lot of my hair. 18 years ago, I went in for an appendix operation. 3 hours later, they wheeled me out. They had found a 4-inch tumor. I had to remove the tumor and some of my intestines. Turned out I was growing a second stomach. That's really weird. But 1 week ago today, was the 7th anniversary of a heart attack. And nobody knows to this day why I had that heart attack. I just did. Spent days in the hospital. And the doctors just could not figure out why I had that. A few years ago, I was complaining about feeling a little weak. Still at work, working as a miner up here at the Sarita mine. And I'm feeling dizzy all the time. Still working, so I go in and see the doctor. I give him explain all my symptoms, and they looked in one ear and said, "Oh, you have allergies." Well, the only thing I'm allergic to is burning sugar cane, so we don't have a lot of that around here. They did some blood tests, called me up a day or two later. I spent some time in the hospital there. I had some bleeding ulcers I was unaware of, and I needed a transfusion. I was so anemic. A couple other things. Hit 9 storks on takeoff out of Kenitra, Morocco, when I was a flight engineer with the Air Force. That was exciting. Another time landing in the middle of the night in the fog in Aviano, Italy. We missed the runway slightly, did a quick bank to the left, lined up on the runway. I got out to do my walk around the airplane, and the left wingtip had struck the ground just on landing, and that could have been traumatic. There's been a lot of other things that have happened to me throughout the years, but these are things that I would not want anybody to have to go through if they didn't have to. I've been through 2 wars and 1 invasion, all bad things. But until the night of the day and the night of the 6th and 7th of November last year, the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me, and I would not wish upon anybody, is I had 3 teenage daughters at the same time. And that's just not something I would want to do again. Yeah. I still have 1 teenager. My 4th one is a teenager. She's about to turn 19. You may recall when I first came back, I talked about a small desk plaque that Admiral Rickover had given to President Kennedy just shortly after his inauguration. And it's a simple prayer, and it's the Breton fisherman's prayer. And it says, "Be good to me, O God, for thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small." Okay, just remember that little prayer. It's a short one. That's all there is to it. Okay. Like I say, feel free to interrupt anytime you want. To set the stage for November, we were preparing to pull our 200-foot boat out of the water for the winter, and the race was on. The water temperature, salt water freezes at 28 degrees, and the water temperature was 28 degrees. And the only thing that kept it from freezing was the beginning of a storm that was coming through the area. We had a crew on the beach that had been come up from Panama, I believe it was, and they were preparing a 400 by 400 foot pad, and we were going to backhaul the boat and pull the boat out backwards onto this pad and then block it up for the winter. We're just going to use pretty much just like the Egyptians did with the rollers. We had inflatable roller bags, and we would just put them under the back of the boat and keep on pulling them, throw another bag underneath of it, and just roll it back up on the beach, block it up with dunnage for the winter, and then it would sit there until in the spring, and we would just reverse that and bring it back out in the springtime. We pulled the boat as close as we could to the shore. It was starting to get a little shallow. It was about 25, 30 feet deep where we pulled the boat, and we just sat there. It was about 500 feet from the shore, ran a heavy, heavy tow line from the boat to a tractor out on the beach, and he was just going to pull us back. And the weather took a turn, not for the better. The Bering Sea during the change of seasons, and it was from summer to winter, there's really no fall, is a very inhospitable place to be. The weather's just horrific. We knew the storm was coming. We had hoped to outrun it, and that was just not going to happen. The Bering Sea has its own schedule. Our ship's captain and the owner of the boat was on the beach helping with the beach crew get all the preparations done. And a decision was made that, in retrospect, well, even at the time I knew it was a bad decision. He felt it was more advantageous to lower our 14-foot skiff into the water and run him out 10 gallons of fuel. 15 minutes down the beach was a gas station. It would have taken us 30 minutes to lower the skiff into the water, drive it to the beach. Well, our mechanic, and I'll use that term loosely, and just leave it at that. He loaded up. We lowered the boat into the water in the 4-foot seas, and he headed to the beach. And it shouldn't take 45 minutes to go 500 feet, but it did. It was really rough water, but it took him that long to get from our boat to the beach, and we knew he was not going to make it back. That left just myself and the cameraman on the boat. The cameraman he's a professional videographer. He does a lot of the Coast Guard Alaska shows, some of the crabbing shows, the fishing shows. He does a lot of video recording. He's very, very talented at that. He's a former Marine, 3 combat tours. With just the 2 of us left on the boat, it's starting to get dark. We pretty much had everything anchored down. We made one more tour around the boat to make sure there was nothing loose that we felt would cause any danger we would lose over the side. The wind picked up some more, and so did the sea. Walking against the wind and the freezing spray was miserable. And now we were riding 6 and 8 foot waves. Those that have been on the sea know that the waves, not the little waves that lap on the beach, but the bigger waves, they come in sets, in a set of 3 waves. They're all generally the same height. There's an equal spacing between the 3 waves. And then there's a calmer moment, and then here comes another set of 3 waves, and it's just a constant thing. But the waves that we had at the time were 6 to 8 feet. They were forecast to 12 to 14 foot waves. That's a lot of wave. Our boat was 200 feet long. It still is. Boat's 200 feet long, 90 feet wide. Weighs 2,000 tons without any equipment on board. Wasn't much of a break from the up and down, and it's just when you're going up and down 6, 8, 10 feet, it's hard to walk. It's hard to walk up and down stairs. You're fighting the wind. You're fighting the water that's coming over the bow. Every time the bow would go down, it'd hit the wave and it'd spray up. And we didn't have a real pointy boat. It's not a powered vessel. It's a barge. So it has a fairly flat face on it. My first time I changed to dry my clothes out, I was kneeling down next to my welder trying to put a ratchet strap around it when a wave came over the side of the boat and soaked me. Up to my room, change into some dry clothes. Just as it got dark to the point where it was difficult to see without light, the first wave broke over the bow. Now, the bow, there's what they call a bowsprit. It's about this high. It's just a flat plate. The deck is 11 feet above the water line. So we have another 5 feet. So there's 16 feet of wave that came over. It was a 16-foot wave that broke over the bow. That'll wake you up. Now you know you're in trouble because you know it's going to get worse. It's just, you know it's going to get worse. Okay, the storm continued to pick up, and the wind shifted, and this was just added to our misery. We had the tide was running from west to east. The winds were coming from the west, so we're pointed into everything. Then the wind shifted slightly, and now we're kind of sideways to the waves. And now instead of just bobbing straight in front and back, we're kind of corner to corner, opposite corners on the boat. More and more waves started breaking over the bow. Every time the bow dropped into a trough, in between the waves, it just, here it comes again, going to get wet. It would slam hard against the bow of the boat, hard. I can't, it was like hitting a wall in your car. It just, horrific slam. Everything that could jump did. Everything that couldn't jump would strain against the chains and the shackles that we had holding everything together. It just felt like you just ran aground. It was I don't want to say anything that'll show anybody in a bad light, so I'll skip names and who. But because of an earlier questionable decision that I loudly and vociferously argued against, our 70,000-pound clamshell that was on its own crane that would swing out off the end of the boat from 350 feet, 350-foot lengths of 1.75-inch diameter cable. It was swung out over, would go down to the bottom, grab, come back up, and swing back in and dump the material onto a feed tray. I thought that the weather was way too rough at the time to leave it out or to try and get one more grab. And this was earlier on before the weather started getting really crazy. I said, no, let's not do it. It's a bad idea. If it gets out there, it's swinging too much. It weighs 70,000 pounds. If it hits the crane, we only had 18 inches of side play on the crane and the clamshell. If it hits that and it creases that steel, it's going to collapse. We can't afford that. But gold for some people is a greedy thing. And let's get one more. Let's get one more. No, we can do it later. They swung the crane out, and it was like, this is crazy. It's swinging 15 feet from side to side. We only have 18 inches of clearance. We can't bring it back in. Now it's stuck out there. Well, couldn't just leave it hanging and swinging because it was bashing up against the back of the boat. Just lower it down in the water. That's the best thing we can do. We'll just lower it down in the water. We'll keep from beating it up, and hopefully, that's the best we can do. Is agreed. Let's do that. But the constant up and down of the boat. You keep in mind that this thing weighed 70,000 pounds. Every time it go up, it pull 70,000 pounds. When it went down, subtract 70,000 pounds of strain from it, and there's a lot of backlash in all the hydraulics and all the gearing and mechanics and whatnot. And I had a lot of fear for its survival. I just didn't think it was going to make it. But the best thing was to leave it in the water. As the eye of the storm came closer, both the wind and the waves worsened, and it was going to be a long night. Finally, a really big wave, full wave, broke over the bow. Crosswise to the bow were 3 containers, shipping containers, that we had turned into our office, control room, kitchen, dining room, rec room, pantry. They were all together, bolted together, and the center walls had been cut out to make it one large room. There was a back door to this that faced the bow of the boat, a steel door, 1.5 inches thick. Wave came over the bow, hit that door, and it broke the latch. The steel, thick as your thumb, it broke the latch. Wave went through the kitchen control room, whole thing, and out the other door. So everything that was in there was flooded, all our food, everything we had was pretty well wasted, soaked with salt water. Nothing you could do with it, smashed everything. Furniture, I slept on a soaking wet couch for 2 days. Me and the cameraman managed to secure that door. We found a 2x10 that was long enough, but not so long we couldn't get it through the doorway. And a whole lot of lag bolts, lag screws. We screwed it together, kept it closed, and that helped. Another wave, just as we got done with that, came over the bow. It hit the door, and the door held, which was a good thing. But the excess water went underneath of the container, which was about, probably 6 or 8 inches off the deck. Water went underneath of there, hit a 1,000-gallon water tank, bounced off of that, hit our electrical control panel, bright flash of light, everything went dark. We had no light, no power, nothing. That same wave, I suspect it was that one. That same wave hit our hydraulic power unit that operated our anchor winch on the bow. It hit it so hard that it broke the exhaust stack off, and when it came off, it took a good chunk of the exhaust manifold with it and filled the engine with salt water. There was no way to operate the hydraulic unit, which didn't matter. I'll tell you that here in a little bit. Again, that same wave, I suspect it was that one. There were so many. We had a diesel-fired heater that we could operate off of our little Honda emergency generator, but the exhaust stack faced forward. Won't do that again. Wave hit that, went in the exhaust stack. Later on, we found a gallon of salt water inside the burner can. We spent several days without heat. Another one of those things, you knew this was coming. Why did you not take care of it? Our mechanic had mechanically disconnected the hydraulic unit from the anchor winch. That left no way to hydraulically lock the anchor winch in position. It was just kind of free floating with the small with a handbrake on it is all it had. And we're going to get to that here in just a moment. And still, things got worse. Okay. From here on, you're going to have to forgive me. I get a little emotional. That little simple prayer, the bread and fisherman's prayer, became a plea. Oh God, thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small. Please help me endure this sea. I made it up to my second level room and was emotionally struggling to keep calm. Every time the bow rose out of the water, I prepared for the 2,000 tons of steel to slam down into the oncoming wave. Everything in my room, furniture, bed, pictures on the wall, lights on the ceiling, my clothes that were hanging on an open rack, it looked like my teenager's room. What a train wreck. When it hit, everything would jump 4 to 6 inches and relocate itself. It was becoming difficult to even get out of my chair. And I prayed, oh God, thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small, and I'm scared. I prepped my immersion suit, and that's a neoprene suit, kind of looks dumpy, looked like Gumby, only red. It'll keep you afloat and keep you alive a little bit longer in freezing cold water. It'll give you an extra 3 or 4 hours of life before you chill down to the point where your core shuts down. And then I heard a sound that I'd never heard before, but I knew exactly what it was. It was the anchor chain slipping past the Wildcat. The Wildcat is, the best thing I can assimilate it to is a zipper. And it's just 2 wheels that come together with teeth in between to grab each individual anchor link or chain link. And I've got a little picture here of, if I can find it. I'll pass it around. Oh, here we go. You start over here. That's how big the anchor links are. That's my foot. Each link of the chain weighs about 36 pounds. And it started stripping out. Well, because our mechanic had disconnected the anchor winch hydraulically, there was nothing to keep it from stripping out any further with the exception of a handbrake that's very similar to the old shoe and drum brakes that we used to have on our cars, only it's 4 feet in diameter. And it's controlled with a 2-foot diameter hand wheel. You can see them on the back of railroad cars. That's the only thing that I had to slow the chain down. Normally, that handbrake and that drum brake is sufficient to hold the chain in place. But that's in calm water, gentle breezes, no big deal. We're 14-foot seas, 30, 35 mile an hour winds. I didn't take the time to put on any rain gear or anything. I'm still cold and wet from the last go-around. I ran out and climbed the ladder to the bowsprit, and now I'm looking out over the bow, straight down into the water, and I'm trying to crank on that hand wheel as hard as I can. I managed to get a turn, about a turn and a half on it, and I couldn't turn it any further. It quit slipping. I went back into my room. Oh, you can just set it. Oh, went back into my room, changed clothes again, put on something dry. But walking through the accumulating debris, walking against the wind, the water that did get onto the boat and the spray was all ice. It was pretty treacherous walking around. Somewhere during that time frame, our emergency generator had succumbed to the storm as well. So all I had was a flashlight. And I prayed, Father, help me. During what I can best describe as a break, but it was more like a 30-minute bar fight, I heard the chain slipping again. Ran back out and tried to tighten it up again as much as I could. Back inside, try to keep my wits about me, shaking. It started again. But this time, it wasn't 1 link at a time or 2 links. It was 6 links, 8 links, 10 links, all in a group. They were slipping through what they call the hawse pipe. The chain comes up out of a chain locker, through the Wildcat, and then down through a hawse pipe to the water and to the anchor. I'm panicked, and I've got to get it stopped. We have 810 feet of anchor chain on the boat. We had about 640, 650 feet of it deployed already. Between that much chain and the anchor, there was about 15 tons of steel laying on the bottom to hold us in position. But we were losing chain. I knew we had about 140, 160 feet left. I don't know how much had slipped out already through the hawse pipe, through the Wildcat. I just knew when it got to the end, that's the end. There's nothing else I can do. The nearest Coast Guard station was Coast Guard Station Kodiak, about 1,000 miles away, about the same distance to the coast of Russia. So, in a panic, I ran to our cameraman's room, and I pleaded for his help. And his response just stunned me. I could not believe what I heard. He says, hey, we're just going to die. I'm just going to smoke all my dope and wait for it to happen. This from a 3-tour combat Marine. He'd given up. I grabbed a 3-foot pipe wrench, ran back out in the dark against the spray and the wind, put that 3-foot pipe wrench on the hand wheel, so now it's about a 5-foot diameter wheel, and I pushed with everything I had. And I prayed for strength. But the strength I needed. I hadn't eaten a decent meal in about 3 weeks. For a few days prior to this, because the weather was so bad, we couldn't get a resupply from the shore. For breakfast, I had 2 handfuls of stale dry Rice Krispies. That was it. Maybe if I could find something for lunch, I would eat it. Generally, we'd skip lunch and eat a can of Spam for dinner if we could find one of those in the mess. Again, back up, strength, not having any strength. And then while I was up there, the chain started ripping through the Wildcat in tremendous 20, 30-foot lengths. And I'm only 3 feet away from this, what they call the Wildcat. Sparks are flying off of it. It's just metal trying to tear itself apart. And the noise, the sound of it was just ear-shattering. The bow rose again. The sets were really tight now. The individual waves, the bigger waves, were only about 75 to 100 feet apart, and they were just coming 3 at a time. But there was barely a break in between the sets now. The first wave of that set passed under the bow, the bow of the boat rose up, and as it passed midship, the bow went down into the trough between the 2 waves, and I looked up and I saw the top of the wave about to crash over the boat. It was about 10 feet above my head. So that makes it about a 25-foot wave. And my wife can tell you I hate it with a passion I cannot describe. I hate cold water. I just can't stand cold water. I order iced tea without ice in the summertime. I can't stand cold water. And I prayed, oh God, hold me tight. I wrapped my arm around the pipe wrench, and a wall of water hit me, and it hit me hard. It slammed me against a handrail. Funny thing is, I didn't feel the cold water. I did not feel that cold water. I was completely submerged in it, and I did not feel the cold. I felt the hit from it, but I did not feel any cold. I jumped back to my feet as the third wave came. But the timing was a little goofy on that one, and it didn't break over the bow. Thank you, Jesus. Didn't break over the bow, but it was big enough to strip more chain. And I prayed, oh God, give me strength. I can't do it alone. Just a little bit more, and I pushed. Just one more turn, Father. Again, Lord, help me. Again, give me the strength. I've got nothing left. And then it stopped. Didn't just slow down. It simply stopped. The storm didn't. Storm kept going. Waves kept breaking over the bow. But not another link slipped past the Wildcat. My chest hurt from hitting the handrail, but didn't hurt to breathe, so I was pretty sure I hadn't broken anything. I tried one more turn on the hand wheel, but it wouldn't budge. It was solid. I needed to rest and to dry out. I have no idea how long this took, longer than I wanted it to, for sure and certain. But whether it was 5 minutes or 2 hours, I have no concept at the time. I made it back up to my room. I needed something to eat. I needed something to drink. And the only thing I could find was some crackers. But I was so dehydrated, I couldn't swallow them. I just ended up spitting them out. I can't even swallow. I closed my eyes and I started to pray for sleep, some rest. I don't recall finishing the prayer. I was asleep. I was out. Nearest guess is I slept for about 4 hours. That's a guess. I have no idea when it started, when I woke up. And soon the sky lightened up, finally. And I went outside to survey the damage, and very quickly it became not damage but carnage. Our 35-ton clamshell was gone, completely gone. The 35 or 350 feet of two stretches of 350 feet long, 1 3/4 cable that the clamshell was suspended from was gone. Half of the hydraulic system that was used to raise and lower the clamshell was gone, ripped from the top of the crane. One of the sprockets that drove the drum that the cable was wrapped on, each of those sprockets weighs 1,000 pounds apiece. One had completely sheared loose from the cable drum and was hanging by the chain. And I didn't even want to get close to that. It was just dangling there. If it comes down, it's going to go straight through the boat. Something I haven't figured out yet how that happened. We have a 40-foot conveyor that all the rock and whatnot that comes up off the bottom that we don't have any need for, we just dump it right back into the sea. Oddly enough, that conveyor had actually moved 15 feet forward and it had been chained down. So why it didn't move to the back of the boat is something for the engineers to figure out. My two welders had been smashed by a 1.5-ton secondary anchor winch. There's 4 anchors, one on each corner of the boat, designed for every time the clam makes a grab. And as soon as the clamshell starts coming up, they move the boat 16 feet to the side. And then the boat's already repositioned. But we hadn't gotten around to other priorities. We won't put those down yet. So they were just sitting free weight on the boat, on pallets. But one of those secondary winches had just lifted itself off of the pallet and slid about 20 feet down the deck and smashed into my two welders. One of them would start, but the control panel, the control module inside had been soaked with salt water, and today I'm going to suspect it's just trash. The other one, we managed to get it running later on. I don't think it will last much longer with all that salt water. I was curious, how much anchor chain did we have left before this all stopped? Remember, we had 810 feet to start with. And then the power of prayer right in my face revealed itself to me. We started out with 810 feet. We had 650 feet deployed at the time. I looked in the anchor, in the chain locker. There was 20 feet left. And that was it. That's all that kept us. Go, yeah.
Ask a question, part of my ignorance, maybe so folks understand what you're saying. I'm confused. If all of that chain broke, went out, whatever anchor, would you be removed from the anchor and you'd just be free floating out into the Bering Sea?
We would.
Okay, that's That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah. We'd have been at the mercy of the wind and waves.
But when it reached the end of the chain, it wouldn't secure.
It did have a small shackle at the end,
Okay.
but anything that's, no. It'd have pulled it right out.
Okay. So
Yeah,
once
and-
you get to the end of your rope, so to speak, it's gonna break.
Yeah, exactly. It would have ripped the bottom out of the, yeah. Yep. We'd have been on our own and let's go for a ride.
I'll tell you where you live.
Yeah. But during my struggle with the chain, 140 feet had stripped out. And the biggest bunch was right there when I was up on the top. And it's just a horrific experience. I don't ever want to go through it again. Does anybody at this point have any question? Any other question? Because I'm.
Everybody else, how did you?
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, there was only 4 of us. Two were on the beach.
Two were on the beach.
Yeah, the captain and the mechanic were on the beach, and it was me and the cameraman.
That was it.
And that was it.
Yeah, two welders though.
2 welding machines.
Oh, machine.
Yeah, it's 2 welding machines. Yeah, I'm the only welder. Yeah.
What was the reasoning for the mechanic to disconnect the hydraulics on the winch?
He had a minor leak in one of the hydraulic lines that he had repaired the line. He just never reconnected the system. There's a series of 3 wheels that all have to be timed at this, correctly to manually engage the pin. I couldn't do it. It's not something one person can do alone. Somebody down below has to be operating the controls to rotate everything, and somebody up at the top checking the alignment. And then once they're all aligned just right, and then the pin mechanically slips together, and then it's all re-engaged and it's hydraulically stopped now. It can't move one way up or down once it's.
Just never got around.
He never got around to it, knowing the storm was coming. Yeah, and it was just one of those things that should have been his function to make sure of. It didn't happen. And he fully expected to make it back. Well, no, you could look outside, no, he ain't making it back.
Spike, when and how were you rescued? Were a rescue boat got you off of that boat?
That'll come.
You gonna get to that?
Yeah, okay.
One final question about the storm. Just, I know it's the Bering Sea, I know it's up in the Arctic Ocean, Arctic Circle.
Mhm.
There,
Yeah,
I don't know.
just inside the Arctic Circle.
And, but is this like similar to them, would be like a similar, like the worst hurricane you could imagine, like hitting Miami or New Orleans?
No, they get worse.
It was-
Yeah, they can get worse. That was one of the worst ones they'd had since, I think, 2000 or something like that.
So,
John?
Would it have been safer to just let that barge go out before all this stuff happened? Or is that like, don't put this thing in a storm and let it?
let it go out.
Well,
Weather the storm.
there's a couple schools of thought on. There are 3 things that you don't do going up to Alaska as a miner, an offshore gold miner. You don't go up there late in the season.
First mistake.
First mistake, we didn't arrive until September,
Wow.
the end of the season. Don't show up with untested, untried equipment. We had never tried it out, fully functional. Don't be broke. We were broke. I didn't realize how broke we were. I knew we were broke. Didn't have a lot of money. I hadn't been paid in 8 months. I didn't realize we were that broke to where we couldn't even buy food. I mean, it was just that bad. Side note, and I think it was one of the stupidest requests ever. My partner, the owner, asked me if I could go take out a loan so I could pay myself.
Send a message.
It was like, what? You want me to take out a loan so I can pay myself? He said, yeah, I'll cover the interest. I said, well, how am I supposed to make the monthly payments? This is, we were that broke. We were that broke. And at that point, about $8 million had been spent on this whole operation. Be-
Was drugs real prevalent? A lot of marijuana? And
Yeah.
stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
I understand everything. Yeah.
Captain bought it for the cameraman. Captain bought it. It was his brother. He bought it for him.
What happened to the cameraman? Are you gonna talk about that? The Marine, the cameraman, what happened to him?
I think he was so stoned out of his mind, he didn't know anything had happened
Did
till
he
in the
live,
morning.
or did he-
Yeah, he lived.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what my.
How many survived? How many on the boat?
Well, there was only two of us on the boat.
Just two guys. Just two on the boat?
Yeah.
Cameraman and him?
A stoned cameraman and me.
So, okay.
And that was it. Yeah, it was crazy. It's amazing, no, crazy. Okay, so my takeaways from the storm. Prayers are answered.
Amen. Yes, yes, Lord.
I prayed, God, give me strength. I don't have enough. Don't wait to ask for God's help. I said, I've nothing left. Why did I wait until I had nothing left to ask God for help? He's always there to help us. He wants to help us. And don't ask for just a little help. Ask for all the help that you need. When you think you're going underwater, Psalm 139, verse 10, even there your hand will guide me, your hand will hold me fast against the wave. And I did not feel the cold wet, and I'm thankful for that. I hate cold water. God's grace is sufficient, and he gladly gives it to those he loves. The will of God will not take you where the grace of God will not protect you. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 14. The grace of our Lord was poured out on me abundantly, along with the faith and love that's in Jesus Christ. In each of life's storms, whether it be emotional storms, personal tragedies, trauma, weather, God alone should be your anchor. Don't rely on yourself. You're inadequate. God is there to help you, guide you, and wrap his arms around you and love you. This is kind of crazy here. When this event began on the morning, afternoon of November 6th, I was down to about 135 pounds. From 163, I was down to 135 pounds. Had not had a decent meal. Had been working 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, no breaks. I worked 73 days straight without a day off. I'd have given my left foot for a cheeseburger and fries. I was so hungry. Had enough to stay alive, but was steadily going downhill. On a clear day, with plenty of light, calm seas, our 270-pound mechanic with the same 3-foot pipe wrench could not break that handbrake loose. It took that 3-foot pipe wrench and a chain and 270-pound man to break that loose. I do not possess that kind of strength to have applied that much pressure to that hand wheel. God did that. From stopping the chain to go. Just the Lord did it. I was just there holding the pipe wrench. It's just as simple as that. So I have a new personal prayer. O God, thy sea is so great, make my faith as great as your sea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, fire it up.